I'm not a good Asian person. As we established this entire episode.
Like,
I did see that. I only read what I want to read.
Yeah, that's fair. That's true.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean, American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show podcast. I am Patrick Armstrong, one of your hosts, here with my 2 other hosts, Nathan Nowak and KJ Relke, for another Wednesday, another episode, another. How are you doing, fellas?
Another doing well.
Great.
I have really been enjoying having nights free and Sundays free. I'm still
new job
in the rhythm of new job, no church. And I realized just yesterday, I was like, you know why people watch so much dang football on Sundays? Because they got nothing else to do. If you're not going to church or some other religious service or something that's on a Sunday and you don't have kids, you know what you got to do? You got to watch football, just hours of football, which is really hours of ads. And that's honestly,
what was that realization like?
I don't know. It was pretty mind blowing. I'm still in that, I've only completed 2 weeks of working, so still feel like I'm new at my job,
sure,
and still figuring that out. But I was like, oh man, I have so much time to learn a language, a la Korean or Spanish. I don't know. Both of them are equally important to me right now. Or just reading a book, sitting down and physically reading a book, because if I were to play video games all night, it would be way more hours than I would have ever clocked normally. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh man, this is a lot. So I don't know. It's nice. I'm getting used to a much slower pace.
Sure.
And I'm not in any hurry to fill it with more stuff at the moment. So it's nice.
It's nice to get your time back, and hopefully for any longtime listeners and also for any new listeners that are here, you're spending your free time. Well, I guess I should say thank you for spending your free time listening to this. I guess you might not
for splitting your time between laundry and
or your commuting time or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, whatever time that you're giving us currently. Thank you for those new listeners. This is a podcast about Korean adoption, or more specifically, the Korean adoptee experience. We are 3 Korean adoptees, and we came together on a random day in July of 2020 over Zoom and decided to start a podcast together. And that's what we talk about. We celebrate our shared heritage, our shared origins, kind of, our shared stories, experiences, things like that, our shared culture. And sometimes we do it with food. Sometimes we do it with drinks, but always doing it with fun.
Yeah, we haven't done it with a drink in a while.
We have not done a drink in a while. What was our last drink? Go.
Soju. Makgeolli?
Soju?
No. It was the...
No way. You mean, are you saying hard drink or just drink in general?
Seltzer?
Yeah, either. I mean, honestly. Yeah, it was a seltzer.
A porto?
There was a tea. We did a really sweet tea.
Oh, with didn't you do it with Hazel?
We did with Hazel, yeah. We did the burdock root.
I was not there.
Remember?
The burdock root one, yeah.
The tea that cures cancer.
Apparently. That wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad.
I actually still have some in my cabinet. So.
I also have mine.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. No need to brag.
Do you? Oh, that's right. You couldn't find it.
No, I wasn't there. Gosh.
No, but did you buy any?
No.
Oh, okay. You can buy it on Amazon if you're really...
Didn't you get some from... I thought I got mine from you.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought so too. But no, you ordered it on Amazon as I did or something as well or something.
That is true.
I don't know, because it was quick and we were in a pinch on time. But
yeah,
that's all BTS stuff. So all right, well, behind the scenes stuff, not the
for all of our first time listeners and probably last time listeners,
welcome to the hot mess that is the Janchi Show.
This is the show.
Yikes.
Yeah. Well, what were we going to talk about? Nathan, you brought something up before we came on the air. And
we were going to talk about what Janchi means in English.
I guess I didn't say that, did I?
It's hard to remember sometimes.
I forgot. Well, we ask a question about how we're doing, and we forget to intro the show. So I think it's It's all of our fault.
And actually, it's funny. Eric, old friend of the show, Eric in LA sent a photo of Janchi noodles recently. And I still haven't had it and so I'm really
Didn't we have that together after our first live show in LA?
It was a different type of noodle. Yeah, it was like a morning noodle, but I still want to have Janchi noodles. So
what does Janchi mean, though?
Feast or celebrate. We are the show that is feasting on stuff.
Yep.
Definitely last time listeners.
It's good to know you guys.
Hilarious.
All right,
absolutely hilarious.
Well, I know because it's every time I think about it, you guys always say that it was wrong the way that I thought about it. But when we first started the show and the name that came up, I seriously was thinking about Doljanchi because that's the only way I'd ever heard it, which is a first birthday. So I never knew there was Janchi noodles or even the way we say Janchi Heyo and things like that. Which again, I don't know if anyone ever else does say that.
I think we made that up.
I don't know that it's like a word. There's probably like a more common word. I don't know that even in English, people don't just say like, let's feast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless they're like LARPing or reading like Lord of the Rings or I don't know, something like that. So yeah, I just think it's an uncommon phrase. It's technically accurate. I just don't know that it's common. You're not going to hear it in any K-pop or K-drama. So yeah.
That would be hilarious if you just heard someone go, "Heyo,
Janchi Heyo, Janchi Haja."
Maybe, yeah, just make it a thing.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we talk about a lot of things. We celebrate the things we have in common and things that are different for us. As we were talking before the show, Nathan, you brought up a good question, good kind of topic, and one of the things that I want to explore because not that I get this all the time, but I feel a weight of what do you do when you're introduced to someone through a third party and you're like, oh yeah, and they're adopted too. And you're like, cool. Like, do you feel pressure to get into it? Do you feel pressure to like figure out where they are, if they're pre or post apocalypse? How do you handle situations where someone else introduces you to another adoptee and your only point of commonality is you're adopted and you're like, oh great, you both have trauma?
I think it depends if it's like an adoptee introducing me to another adoptee, or
let's
if it's
assume
like
that it's
a
not
non-adopted person.
It's a non-adopee
who is only using that as our only connector. I feel like it is very.
Like,
I don't know.
You like basketball?
Yeah.
Talk to this person. They also like basketball. But you're like, oh, you're adopted.
Yeah,
talk to this person. They're also adopted.
Neighbors
They're
Asian.
also adopted. Yeah,
Yeah.
like. Oh, you're both
Cool.
Asian. Yeah. I'm honestly like thinking right now, and I can't think of a time where I've had that specifically happen. So I haven't actually thought about what my response would be to someone introduce me to another adopted person, and that was the only like point of connection that they were making. The only association was that you're both adopted, so I'm going to introduce you that way. I feel like it would be very awkward. I feel like I would try and pivot immediately. And hopefully get away from that situation. Like, let's talk about sports. Let's talk about something.
Yeah.
Not
lighter topics like
like
politics.
if they want to talk about it, we can get into it later. Like that's the thing.
Like, have you been watching The Blood of the Lamb?
Yeah.
What? Excuse me? Can we go back to my adoption? I prefer that.
I don't think I would just jump right into any topics of adoption or anything with somebody who I just met. Number one, even though we were both adopted, because again, like KJ said, you don't know where they are and which side of the apocalypse. And also I find it odd that sometimes it would be a non-adopted person introducing you. I have had many non-adopted people though say, oh, I know an adopted person, as just more of a commonality saying, trying to relate to me. And they'll usually throw in, oh, they're a really good person or something like that,
Yeah, generally it's I know an adopted person and they don't have any of these problems.
Yeah.
They don't talk about any of this stuff you're talking about. They're fine.
Yeah.
And then it's like, ooh.
To which you reply, yeah, I had a black president once. Thanks,
Obama. But no, I on the other side of it is I am very curious when I do hear somebody say that they know somebody who's adopted, or I meet somebody who's adopted without an introduction. I just randomly walk, I'm walking next to somebody who's adopted. That doesn't happen, but you know what I'm saying. And
your adopted sense is tingling.
You see someone on the subway in Denver and they say, "I'm adopted" on their shirt.
Exactly.
What if you were like, "Oh my God, I'm adopted too," and they're like, "Oh no, I just bought this at Goodwill."
Yeah.
I just thrifted this.
But I do feel a commonality, and I do feel like a bond that I do like want to talk to them. I do want to like connect and see, what they're all about and, what they're doing. But that's because it wouldn't be in a setting, I guess that's, somebody's introducing me. It would be more of like a private setting. I wouldn't just jump into it. But
yeah, I guess when I meet somebody who, and it's not an introduction, and then like that just comes up naturally that they're adopted, I think I have the initial curiosity of like wanting to gauge, but I don't think that, I think what I've learned, especially doing the show, but just like in general over the last 3 years, has been like there's a time and place for that conversation. And sometimes people are not ready to go there. And I know myself being someone who can jump to the conversation very quickly. Like I want to be mindful of people's where they're at and not make assumptions like, oh, they'll get it. Oh, they'll understand when I say the apocalypse because they've listened to our show because it's the only place that's
because we're the only ones using it.
Because we're trying to
for now
make that stick in the lexicon. But yeah, I feel like in that situation it's a little bit different, where it's just kind of like a feeling out, and especially if somebody is like starting to have those questions or is thinking more critically about their adoption, like that's probably going to come up regardless. Because I found that generally other adoptees will ask me, like if we're in that situation, and then we'll get into it. And especially not that I feel like,
like you're involved in it too.
Oh, sure. And it's not like, well, yeah, because generally it's like, well, what do you do? And it's like, oh, well, I host a podcast.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that I say now.
Now you're a professional.
I host a podcast. Yeah. No, I'm a professional podcaster. And then you got to tell them what the podcast is about. And I do a much better job than I did at the beginning of this episode. But yeah, it's just very contextual, circumstantial, I feel like. But I don't know, have you found yourself in that situation, KJ?
I mean, I've found myself in similar situations where even actually, maybe this is more awkward. I'm not even introduced to the adoptee. Someone just says like, "Oh yeah, my so-and-so is adopted. Do you think they would like the show?" Or my so-and-so is adopted. Do you think do you want to have them on the show? Or, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a weird, like, I think there's this whole range of things that we should talk about, the three of us. And it's like, how to talk to or how to deal with non-adoptee people who are good friends, family members, whatever, who you've known pre your own apocalypse. And then you've gone on this journey and you don't want to take the 30 minutes minimum that it would take to catch someone up on like where you're at in life. Cause it's like some type of reunion type thing or whatever. And, but you do want to say like, well, here's where I'm at now. And then they jump to conclusions and you're like, that's super wrong, but we have all this history, whatever.
Right.
I found myself in that space a number of times where, over the holidays, some friends of mine, like longtime friends of mine, were moving to Denver actually from Houston. And so they made a pit stop in Dallas. And so I got to see them and it was good to talk to them and their parents, and who have adopted, and then have biological kids of their own. And then when my grandfather passed away and we went to Arizona, I saw a lot of extended family there. And some of them were like, "Oh, do you still do the podcast thing where you like eat food?" And I'm like, well, I mean, it was like more than that. It's like a whole hour that you didn't pay attention to. We just posted the video on social, but yeah, I still do it. You know what I mean? But then it's like, I don't want to get into it right now and do all this kind of stuff. And we're here for a very different reason. So
right.
You know what I mean? But I think there's just this whole, like, how do I deal with that? And I think especially like talking to an old friend who is going to adopt, has just adopted, whatever, and then you like catch up with them and like, oh yeah, this is interesting. I'm like talking with adoptive parents. You know, that's a situation that I have not found myself in a lot of times, and yet in this one case, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I was like, how much does research do they know? How much do I? You know what I mean? Like, it was just weird to be in that space and like. Because the show, I think, and Instagram and whatever, wherever we find our adoptee spaces are very comfortable. But then when you're out of that, which is obviously not hard to get out of that circle, out of that bubble, you're like, oh, this is weird. I can't just say things like the apocalypse and people get it.
I do think it's really interesting. Yeah, I do think that contrast is very interesting. But I think that's something that I've been talking about a lot is like, we got to be able to have those conversations. Then it's going to be super uncomfortable to talk about it outside. But I think it's really interesting to me, at least, when I take the kind of language and conversation that I have in the adoptee spaces, and especially the first few times that I was starting to tell some of the, or talk about some of the stuff that I was learning with just not people who were adopted.
With just not
just,
people.
They were ghosts.
I was exclusively speaking to horses and dogs.
Exclusively the animal kingdom that I was doing all of my initial communications to. But just like the amount of curiosity that I felt like was like genuine, it felt like genuine curiosity versus like performative, just, oh yeah, that's interesting that you do that. And I thought that I found that to be interesting, and I found it to be heartening, because I think that, especially in my friend group, I especially at the beginning, was very worried about this awakening, this apocalypse that I'm now entered into, how that would shift those relationships. And it did, obviously, to a degree, but instead of being met with like, not necessarily fear, but dismissiveness, it was more of a genuine curiosity perspective. And then it's like, okay, how do I take this adoptee language and make it digestible for this other audience, and going from there.
Do you find yourself rambling or talking too much because 100%, of that?
100%. Because it's also like in real time trying to figure out what works. Like, how do I describe this concept and make it so it's like, oh, that makes sense. I can resonate or relate to that
version.
Exactly. But it's like, but that's the thing. It's just like there's so much. Like there's not so much, and then there is at the same time.
What's like one concept that took you a long time and you feel like now you're able to distill it a little more succinctly?
That's a good question. I knew when I said that it was a concept that was going to be, I guess for me, it's personal. It's more identity based, and explaining my specific journey. So like when we first started the podcast, I would explain it as I was like running the opposite direction for a long time. Then I was sprinting back. And I think that type of description, while very simple, I think, and easy to understand, didn't really capture it. And now I talk about it in these 3 stages of rejection, reclamation, and acceptance. And I think, to Nathan's point of rambling, I do think when I tell that part of the story, it is a lot. But I do think, and it can probably feel very rambly, but I do feel like I can explain it now and talk about it in a way that's more digestible or more succinct. Which I feel like at the end of the day, hopefully is creating more empathy for the community overall, because I feel like that specifically, while not everyone's story follows those 3 stages, I feel like can encapsulate at least what an experience could look like from someone from our community. So hopefully that when I share that, it like, that's where that genuine curiosity comes in, like, oh, I didn't think about that. Because I think universally anyone can feel like invalid, like, or feel like they don't connect with or belong to, or hate, even dislike and genuinely hate their identity of who they are in some form or fashion. And then working through that, I feel like that's a concept that anybody can understand, but really trying to make the adoptee identity and the adoptee community part of that, and making that seem like, oh, that's something that makes sense, that, oh, you can go through that too, experience that as an adopted person. I think so. That would be maybe the one concept of like identity, I guess, and whether it's rejection, reclamation, whatever it looks like, working through that. And again, I think I just rambled for like the last 3.5 minutes about explaining it, but I guess that's kind of how I explain it.
I would say when we first started the show, we would talk a lot about the adoptees as a monolith, or stories and stuff like that we are not a monolith and stuff like that. And I think that for me is something I always knew, but I have heard so many more stories now of different, circumstances, positive, negative, just random things that I wouldn't have thought of. And I think that is good to explain because I think people know that. People know that not everyone's story is the same, but a lot of them assume that the general one of everyone, being thankful or, being, an ideal situation kind of a story is what they think about. And when I explain that there are not the ideal stories, there is a lot more trauma that they might assume that's something that, again, like you said, Patrick, I want them to just have some empathy for other people's stories and consider that, and not take adoption as this overall, amazing bright light kind of, story. So even though there are those so.
I guess the other tie, like in probably the easier way for what everything I just said would have been to describe it would have been like
this is Patrick
talking
tries
about
again.
This is Patrick take 2. Just the adoptee coming to consciousness. I think that's the one concept for sure that I can say that I've learned to describe more succinctly than just coming out of the fog, or like, I don't know, just like talking about how one could possibly go through that journey. And I feel like I've been able to not very well describe that, especially from my own experience. And then to be able to talk about that more succinctly from a personal level and from a more macro level, I think.
I think I know what you mean, but can you describe it for me? Like specifically, like, I don't think I have heard you say the phrase coming to consciousness.
Well, I use adoptee consciousness, and I still haven't read the study, but I know that's like J-Ron and Amanda Baden and Grace Newton's like real big thing that came out recently about shifting away from maybe the fog language to something different. And so again, the coming out of the fog is like the thinking critically about your adoption or adoption itself differently. As KJ puts it, the apocalypse, where you have this change in thought process, and regardless of whether you pursue it any further or not, like that's where you end up. Like it's changed forever. This is like a moment in time. So, okay, so I'm describing the consciousness part of it. So essentially, at the end of the day, I think the way I would talk about it is, okay, now I can't even describe it, I guess. That I feel like isn't anything that I already said, I guess, is my issue that I'm running into. I don't want to just repeat myself.
Well, is it just like another term for like what I call the apocalypse or coming out of the fog?
Sure, like adopting consciousness.
Probably more neutral, like, because I choose apocalypse because it has like specific baggage to like end of the world and revelation and all those kinds of things. But yeah, so coming to consciousness is just a more neutral term for like when being adopted is not just a thing that you are, but you have like a full kind of mental model and awareness of that as like an identity that you wear. In the same way that one might wear a gender identity, a sexual identity, a familial identity, a fandom identity, like that kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah. So coming to consciousness is more of the, I always say scholastic, but that's not really the right word. Like academic. The scientific, term of like coming out of the fog or the adoption apocalypse, like entering the apocalypse. It's just, I think, a more formalized version. And maybe I shouldn't even be using it because I haven't dove into that study yet. And maybe I'm talking about it incorrectly. But as far as everything that I've heard summed up about it, J-Ron was just a guest on the Adoptees On podcast. So she was talking about it there, which is why it's fresh in my mind. It's just, that's how I've come to know it. And I know that like the point is like, how do we, again, the whole point of it is like, how do we create language that's our own and not, that isn't rooted in and doesn't come from an adoptive parent.
Yeah.
Or steal it like you're doing, man. Stealing words. Why don't you just make up your own term? No.
Stealing it. I even said it when I initially said it that it was from there. And then I hadn't read the study yet. Don't put me on blast like that. I got the receipts. Run it back to 20 minutes.
No, I mean, hey, KJ's got his apocalypse. You should just, make up a new phrase.
I mean, that's
No,
why
I'm
I
not the person
posted
that
it
comes
on
up
the
with the
internet,
words.
So
I'm not the one that comes up with the words. I just like
true.
to
You're
use them.
You're the person
They
who
help me
memorizes all of
understand.
them and
Help me
understands.
understand. And I clearly don't because I'm just not good at describing things.
So I don't know. Sometimes you do. You
thank
amaze
you.
me at how well your memory
Like 2
is
out of 10.
on certain things. Yeah,
2 out of 10, 20%. I mean, in most
Sure.
cases, that's failure.
I
Actually,
mean,
in every
given the
case.
amount of hours that we've spent talking to each other, that's still a number of hours that you've been eloquent and
Yeah.
right and good. So
Out of 1,000 hours, that's 200 hours. Okay, that sounds better.
yeah.
yeah,
You think
you're
we
like,
talked for 1,000
I
hours?
talk good for
Still the
200
majority.
hours.
That does sound like a lot when you say it like that.
Yeah.
But these are the conversations we should be having though with other people. And like this is what it sounds
Are
like.
you saying
In
we
my-
should have it not in a podcast? Are you saying we're doing
Yeah.
it wrong, the three of us?
Yeah, we're doing this completely wrong. No, just like that's what it. I feel like that's how the conversation goes in those circles that aren't just adoptee spaces. Like even there, where I'm struggling to like really think about how I want to describe it. Like sometimes I will have to be like, "Hey, I'm trying to describe this for you, and I'm doing a terrible job at it. Like, let me get back to you on this thing," and then you move on to the next thing. Like I think that's a privilege I have with my friends. Is like there's no shortage of topics to talk about, so we can move on. But
Mhm.
like those conversations, it's about building to a constructive or productive, like new thought or building empathy with each other in a certain way. And they're messy, they're sloppy, they don't always go great, but you have to have the conversation. If you don't have it, you're not going to learn,
Mhm.
or
And
other
that's why-
people won't learn.
That's why I say about the rambling thing. I find it hard sometimes to not talk too long about the topics. If somebody asks me about the topic and then I just start going off on it and things like that, I feel like, okay, how do I transition out of this now to something else? So it doesn't sound like I'm obsessed with this topic of something
I'm
that
stuck
they
here.
have,
Guys,
that they don't know
Guys?
much about, maybe. So
And you're looking around, you can't throw it to either one of us. We're not there with you in that conversation. That's funny.
like let me just FaceTime my co-host real quick. Just let me get them, and then I'll just do a live show, a mini show for you.
just
That's
hand
funny.
business cards out. And here's my podcast. Go listen to 160.
Have you had business cards for our podcast?
No, I said we should. then we can they can break off into that as
That's really funny.
What if we had business cards for
Segue.
every episode, each individual episode? We just had 100 business cards.
That's a QR code.
That is a QR code
That's
for sure.
not
Yep. That's pretty easy.
Are we out of stuff to talk about already?
No, I was just
Oh, okay.
I was interested in, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things like sometimes I just feel this pressure to, because I am a podcaster, because this is a thing that we have dedicated a lot of hours to talking about, I feel pressure to have like, to be somewhat expert on it, even though
Yes.
this is mostly an entertainment podcast. And even though like most of my time on the show is spent thinking about how I can make jokes while someone else is talking, sometimes I'm like, all right, well, okay, here's the thing that I have to say. And then it's in an interview and I shouldn't take up this space because we're interviewing someone. Yeah, I don't know. There's just like, I wish that there's something in my head that's going on, I think, around the identity of adoptee and around like some early things that I'd hoped for that would sound like capitulation if I ever said them out loud, but it's not that. I think it's, Patrick, to your point, it's like that idea of like, not so much reclamation, but just like being at peace with who I am, where I am, my lot in life, if you will. Where it's just like, yeah, I mean, this is just how things are. Do I wish they were different? Maybe a little bit. Could they be different? I don't know, probably. But like, you know what I mean? And even when we were talking to Katie around our secret project, I was like, oh man, I wonder if we pull this project off, will it feel different, or will it, because we did it, will it feel different only because we did it, or will it feel different at all? Will it just be like another thing out there in the world? And there's many other things like that. So I don't know. I think I'm in a weird space with figuring out who I am, where I am. I know top of the year, I was like, I just need time to live into where I am. But it's like I don't know. And I feel bad because we have a podcast, and I think I just want to publicly state it's okay for me to not actively be pressing into these identities and actively be,
Agreed.
Whatever, which I know that the two of you are like totally okay with me. But one of the most, I don't remember if I said this out loud to y'all, but one of the most terrifying things about doing the live shows is like I can see our audience. I'm like, oh God, these are the people that I am talking to. These are the people who, for whatever reason, have dedicated time to listening to me talk to them in their ear holes. So yeah, there's like an added pressure there. I don't know.
I think that's the terrifying thing about doing anything live. Like, especially speaking, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I was just in Boston and DC for these Dear Asian American events, and I was emceeing, and somebody came up to me after, and they're like, "Oh, you do such a good job at speaking publicly." And I was like, and they're like, "I don't know if I could ever do that." And I was like, "Well," I'm like, I didn't really think I did that good. I was rambling, stumbling all over the place, blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, to your point about the like reclamation being like, a reclamation for me was not finding acceptance and being okay with all that stuff. It was the start of like, oh, I gotta like unpack or unlearn or relearn or learn something new about all of this, like to gain that understanding of myself. And then, a year and a half later, I found that what I felt like was that understanding, which moved me into, okay, I'm cool with myself to be able to do more of that public facing thing. And then, but I think too, with that comes the added pressure, or at least maybe the awareness of that non-existent pressure of being the expert in all of these things. And especially if, like, for me, because I'm taking a route of wanting to like speak about these things and quote unquote probably be seen as some sort of expert on the topic of this. Yeah, thought leader, whatever the label is. Really, I just want more people to empathize with our community. And so, like, so our most marginalized people have better outcomes in their lives. Like, that's really the only reason that I want to like speak about it professionally. And because it also seems like a viable opportunity to sustain for my own family. But, it's just like every time I go up and do something in front of people, it's just like, am I going to F this up so terrible that I'm not only fired from whatever job I was just doing, but I've just canceled from everything? Like, how terrible am I going to mess this up? Every time, even after I feel like super comfortable, I can just walk up and start doing it. But like, I'm always thinking, you're going to fuck this up. And I think kind of that fear helps me to like, maybe not fuck up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've heard that from a lot of actors. And when I've listened to their interviews on podcasts and stuff, they always say that they have a little bit of fear, or a little bit of nervousness almost every time, because it makes them, it makes it real, but it makes them, the effort to do what they need to do, viable. If they just called it in and everything was too easy, then they might not be putting, a top level quality product out or something, or acting or things like that. So, but when they fear that they might mess up, that fear kind of drives them to be better or to do what they need to do.
Well, it's like your job and stuff. Like, when you're taking pictures like at an event or something, or for a client, you want to do a good job. It's probably that fear
I'm
of
afraid
like
that I'm going to screw it up. Yeah, totally.
And I think it also like that just speaks to a matter of worthiness. Like you consider it a worthy thing. It is worth your time, worth your excellence, whatever. So you don't want to do poorly. But there's so many people who are just like, I don't care. I could be like, if public speaking was your thing, but you had to talk about like, I don't know how to make a soda product. You'd be like, I just gotta. There's nothing on the line. Right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's like I'm out here, like I am speaking, I'm trying to make a living, but also like ultimately I want to further like my community. Like whatever. Like it feels like a lot on the line, and so you get nervous because it is worthy of that effort. So yeah.
I definitely feel that I think we all have come further since the 2.5 years ago when we started this. We've all done a little bit more each time. or we've been a little more involved or something. How you were saying, KJ, that we don't always, sometimes you want to take a step back or you just want to slow down on things that you wanted to be doing. But I think we do little things sometimes. It may not be for the community, or it may not be for ourselves, or may not be for a very specific reason, but they are things that are advancing our knowledge or our awareness, or our state, our position in adoption awareness. I think Patrick speaking about it now more publicly. I'm on the con committee, and KJ, you're actually interacting more with the community, the adoption community as well. You're not. Oh,
for the audience at home,
I've seen so many pictures of you and Stephanie and Jennifer. I mean, that's.
Oh no, that's just having friends locally who are not white.
That's just what it looks like to have friends.
Yeah.
Well, just have this 3 people who grew up in white communities are like, oh look, not white people. Let's hang out.
But do you not consider that like an advancement in, not advancement, what's the better word? Just furthering your own self exploration.
I mean, I do. I think there is a part of it, and we might have talked about this in a previous episode, but it's just nice to like be in a space, a Lunar New Year space, actually specifically for the 3 of us, a Solar space, and be like, I don't know,
right.
Jennifer's oldest made little gift bags for us, and he drew a rabbit in red marker and then wrote "Sehe Bokman Badeseo," but he didn't write it in Korean, like in Hangul, which I thought in my head, I thought he had like studied the written language, but I guess he hadn't. And I was like, oh, have you not done that? And he's like, no, I don't know how to do that. And then Stephanie was like, yeah, I mean, I can't do the written language or whatever. I was like, I thought that you could too, whatever. But there's like just in a way that it was like, oh, I thought that was whatever. But then like, just there's no pressure to like make some type of Korean ofrenda. I don't know, the whatever pillar to our ancestors, whatever that is, for Solal or anything like that. There's no like no bowing, none of that, because we don't have that. That's not a part. You know what I mean? Like, so it's really comfortable for the 3 of us to gather and to just like have that time and just like be like, I don't know, this is what Koreans do, and we're Korean, so we're gonna do it. But we're, and so it's just nice to do that. But no, I think about that less as like I think actually because there is a CAD community like Facebook group for the DFW area that I'm not very active in. I just think of it as me being very rude and not joining in, which is maybe why I'm like, no, I'm not furthering any of it. So
I'm deliberately ignoring this group.
Yeah.
But
I feel
small groups.
Yeah. I feel like it's man, I feel like my brain is just blanket on stuff. What was I fucking gonna say? Keep all this in. Oh my God. What was I going to say? I'm furious. Fumbling around. Oh, yeah. I do remember. Yes. Actually, that helped me a lot. Thank you. I think that it's in those slow moments where we have to like take a minute, take a beat. Like I got to step back from doing that work. We're furthering ourselves in those moments because we're implementing everything that we've learned, whether or not we know it. So like those small things that you're talking about, like even just saying "안녕하세요," like it's just randomly, I feel like is part of that learning process. And sometimes, like I think we need to take those moments to actually use what we learn, or you're gonna just be. I feel like at my age, I'm like when I learn new stuff, like I gotta unlearn a bunch of stuff that I already do because I don't have enough. Capacity.
Learn one thing, take like 12 steps backward to make room for that.
I only have a 1 gig storage drive up here. I
just wait till you're my age. Then you're not trying to move the stuff out. You're just forgetting it on random.
I feel like I'm already doing. I feel like it just deletes things without my knowledge or consent.
Exactly.
I didn't click yes, but it clicked yes for me.
Like, would you like to empty the trash? I mean, I guess.
But by like practicing those things that you learn in those quiet moments, hopefully you just becomes muscle memory and you like learn it, you internalize it, and then you can forget it because you're just doing it now. It's part of your life.
That's true. I guess like without those gatherings, I would not be going to Zion Market regularly. I wouldn't be getting the samples. I wouldn't be considering like, oh yeah, this is like, I just picked up Samjang because they always have super bomb soybean paste. And I'm like, when I found it, I was like, oh, this is it. And this is it in Korean. This is the thing that I wanted. And now I know the name. Or I wasn't practicing like giving and receiving with two hands and saying like, oh, mashisoyo, or like, oh, kamsamnida. Like, yeah, this is delicious, whatever, all those little things, because I live in Texas. And so right now I'm just like, man, Spanish is going to overtake my world, and it's going to be so prevalent in my kids' world. Yeah. And while I don't necessarily want to raise trilingual kids because that sounds like exhausting, I'm like, well, I mean, I want them to know Korean some, and I want them to know Spanish like a lot. So, and English, they'll probably still be around, just not going anywhere that fast. But you know what I mean? So I just like, yeah, without those gatherings, you're right, I wouldn't have the opportunity to practice. Also, it's nice because like, it's funny because like, I just feel like every time I go over to their house and we do a Korean thing, something comes up and I'm like, oh, I'll just get this. So like my last, like sold out gifts were like doso, like hot stone bowls and like metal chopsticks. So it's just like, even I think for me, like just here's a little bit of Korean culture, even while I'm eating other bits of Korean culture, that I'm like, oh, I got to get that, whatever. It's nice. So yeah, that's fair. I got to practice. It's not adoptee Korean stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it doesn't even have to be. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't even have to be adoptee
general
stuff.
Friendship.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. It's like, I don't know. It's just like the community aspect of it, I think, is the most important thing. Yeah. Because whether you go through the identity stuff or not, like, I think just having a person or knowing that you can find like one or two people out there who can you just find in this journey, I think is so important, whether you do anything with it or not. Because it's fucking lonely. Like, it's lonely, and it gets like super sad and depressing sometimes. And if you don't have, like, especially if you enter this and you like don't have a partner or a significant other, and you're just like kind of in like just whatever circumstances found you kind of on this island, you
have a partner who doesn't understand or doesn't want to engage,
or you're just isolated in a different way. Wherever you're at, like, to find those people in the community, whether you do adoptee stuff, whether you do your culture of origin stuff, any of that, just to have those people is the key, because then like it just lessens that burden of just existing and being caught in these in-betweens, and whether you understand it or not, like at least you're caught there with somebody else. So
yeah.
With that being said, if anybody wants to reach out to us, feel free. I mean, if you don't know anyone in your area, you don't know anyone at all.
Yeah, we'll be your friends.
We will.
We'll be your new best friends. That's the catchphrase of the year. 2023, your new best friends.
We are your new best friends.
That's taking up a lot of my brain space right now, is remembering that catchphrase.
Alrighty. Well, let's do a food.
All right, let's do a food.
Good.
Time to celebrate.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. Food,
thank you.
Eating, drinking, snacking portion.
Woo!
We made
Chill
it.
Applause.
Food. Okay, so today we are eating this little snack that has very little English on it. So all I know...
Does it have any English?
It does. The word up.
Oh, yeah. That's fair. I was going to say, it's like, it has nutrition facts.
Yeah, that's just English. Pointing to where you open it. But oddly enough, I translated the part above it. It's the part above it says peanut content. So there you go. Whatever we're eating has peanuts in it. And you can tell that also because there's a picture of a peanut. But it's made by Orion.
Looks like it's surrounded in a little like popcorn puff or something.
Yeah. Do you know what it's called, the bag? Yeah. Though? I don't even know what it's called, except the translation on the back just says peanut crunch.
Yeah. Great. I mean, danggong gangjong-un. That's the topic, I guess. So yeah, danggong gangjong.
Oh, these look a little bit different, I thought.
Really?
Sometimes when I speak Korean, it feels silly and wrong. Danggong.
I definitely smell the peanut when you open it up. Yeah, it definitely looks a little Little
It does
like
have
a
an open here.
looks like a peanut Rice Krispie treat. That's what that looks like. It's like
Smells
about the
good.
size of a
Smells
baby
good.
meatball.
How did you guys open this?
Where
Got
it
a
says
tear
up.
on the
Oh
side.
no, okay, it worked. It worked. I'm just bad at using my hands.
Oh, yep.
Oh
I
gosh.
don't hate this.
Oh yeah,
That's a lot of peanut butter.
it's
I
very
don't
peanut
hate it.
butter,
I like it.
but
That's really intense, y'all.
yeah,
Wow.
Honestly, it just tastes like a little Ritz peanut butter cracker.
All right.
Ritz.
So the one
Yeah.
word that I do know on this that I see a couple times is kozo.
What's that mean?
Kozo. Han. Down here.
Han.
I'll never forget this. Kozo Han. Sesame flavor.
Mm.
From our favorite Kozomi crackers with the episode with Minju. Shout out from @Fluent Korean.
Well,
I don't know why,
like
but
it.
I'll never forget that word.
Yeah, I would have to say. I mean, I was surprised at what it looks like because it does look like a Rice Krispie treat. I don't see actual physical peanuts in it.
They're in there. I can taste it.
I think
But
it's
I
like
can
in the
taste it.
middle.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
must
it's in
be
the
like.
middle.
Oh.
It's the sweet surprise in the middle of the snack. Little piece of
Nope,
peanut.
you lied. It's not. But I do taste them,
I feel like
Are
I'm
peanuts a
biting into
sweet
the
surprise?
peanut. Yeah, if you're a good child.
and not allergic to
Interesting.
them.
That's
Like,
a
not
loaded
allergic.
statement.
Yeah,
Like
not
my
allergic,
kids.
I guess.
Yeah, what? I'm definitely biting into a peanut, but I
Yeah.
don't know where. Oh, I just crumbed my pants a little bit.
Yeah, I don't see it
Yeah.
in there either. You're right.
yeah, I mean, I think they're like camouflage because it's the
Camouflage.
same color as the Rice Krispies in it. So I think that's
okay,
why it's
here's
hard
one.
to see
This
it.
isn't going to show up.
Oh,
well.
there you go. You got a
Oh,
giant
yeah,
one right
yeah.
there.
But
That
it's
looks, like on
definitely.
that looks like it's on the thing.
Yeah,
on the
that's like
cover
the
of the
cover
bag.
photo. They weren't lying. Good job, Orion.
Good job not being a liar.
No, I like these. I could eat this whole bag. I just
I'm
ate.
going to.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just ate dinner, so I'm kind of not. I'm trying to refrain from eating the whole thing.
Don't do it.
But yeah,
Eat it.
I like it.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of peanut butter, but this is. No, whoa! Bless you.
You can cut
You
that
also-
out.
That was on camera too.
I must
You
be
also
allergic.
froze, so that was wild. I just saw you go like you were dabbing, and then you sneezed.
I must be allergic to peanuts too. somebody give me an EpiPen.
As he goes into the bag for more peanuts.
Just making sure.
All right, what are you gonna rate it,
Nathan.
Wow.
Nathan?
I like this more than halfway, not all the way to a 5, so I'm going to go straight 4.
I like this more than halfway.
That's my reasoning. Yes, I like it better than average, but it's not perfect, but it is right below that. So I'm giving it a 4 because it's not too sweet, not too peanutty. It's crunchy. I don't know. I mean, I like it. I think it's well-rounded. Can't go wrong with that. I almost wanted to say,
like it.
now here's one more thing that might bump it up to a 5. What if it had like half of it that was dipped in chocolate?
I was about to say, if you're going to say you're going to put this in a bowl full of milk, I'm about to slap you off of this computer screen.
You're getting slapped
No.
off the screen, dude.
No, I would not do that. No, but chocolate.
I'm just still stuck on. I like this more than halfway. That's tickling me to no end.
I'm good with my words.
Interesting. Yeah, like I said, I don't love peanuts or peanut butter. But this is not, it's like very nutty without being super peanut-y, if that makes sense. Emphasis on the nut. So I think it's a good flavor overall. I do kind of feel like I'm eating birdseed, which is not a great feel for me. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I think it's entirely fine. It's not like, I don't know, 2.5 is like I nothing it, like just no opinions. So I mean I like it, but it's not incredible. So 3 out of 5 for me.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I'm really enjoying this snack.
Wow.
I like your description of the bird feed seed. That's making me laugh, and so
That's a
I'm-
plus for you?
Yeah,
It makes
That
me
was
like
like
it more.
not a good thing for
yeah,
me.
yeah. It's making me laugh, and I'm just having a good time with a snack.
It's healthy.
If it had, Nathan, I'm glad you brought it up because if this had chocolate on it, that would be the only addition that I would make to it. Was just cover this thing in chocolate.
Yeah.
Pop it in my mouth. I'll eat 100 of these and give it a 5. But I'm going to go 4.5. Did I say that already? 4.5. Yeah. Great snack. Great for birds and great for humans that like to eat bird food.
And are not allergic to peanuts.
So. Yeah, probably not good for birds, actually.
I got white sugar on it.
This is just a solid snack.
Yeah, no, I like it.
I like it a lot.
I like it better than half.
I love it.
Oh,
corn syrup, peanut butter. Wait, sorry. Corn syrup, peanut, wheat flour, white sugar, corn starch, vegetable oil, salt, and then a bunch of chemicals. So
I also have to say that the size is perfect. Not too big and it's not too small. Although Patrick threw it into his mouth, he could have technically choked on that one. We would have sat here watching you.
And then all of YouTube would have sat here and watched me die too.
Well, I tried to CPR you across the screen.
Yeah, I know.
It's possible. I heard if you yell loud enough, like it'll happen. The computer will fall off.
Send you into cardiac arrest.
Yeah, the computer will fall off. Not only is he choking, I've also sent him into
cardiac arrest.
I'll just sneeze again. How about that?
All right. Well.
All right. Well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, everyone. If it's your first time or you've been listening since the beginning, you can find us on all the interwebs locations. Not all of them, but you know the ones. At Janchi Show. We are on the web at janchishow.com. We have some merch there at our shop. You can support us, buy me a coffee. You can rate us, of course, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I don't know. Do they still do ratings on Spotify now? Actually,
I'm only on Apple Music.
Yeah, but we appreciate all the ones I looked at it recently. We had like 68 reviews already. So I just
68,000 reviews.
68,000.
68,000 reviews. If you want to be 1 in 1,000, just kidding.
You can also leave us a voicemail, which I don't know if you listened to all the way to the end of our last episode, but we did have a very good,
heartfelt
message that we are not.
That was murderers. So sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can leave that voicemail at 972-677-8867. And you can email us at janchishow@justlikemedia.com. Am I forgetting anything? I don't know. I don't
think so.
In case you were wondering, the phone number goes straight to a voicemail box. No one actually talks to you. So if that's a plus or a minus, just wanted to throw that out there for you.
You can find me at nnowalk on Instagram.
You can find me at KJ Relke, wherever I want to be found on the internet.
I ate all mine.
Oh my gosh.
All of yours?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Dude, this bag is... A serving size is 1/6 of the bag.
Yeah,
1/3.
It says 3 servings.
It
says 3 servings per container. 1/3.
1/3 of pack.
Yeah.
No, it does not.
Yeah, it does. Look.
1/3.
Oh, look on the... No.
But the whole pack is 390 calories.
You're saying 1/6.
Mine says 1/6.
That's weird. Really? Did you get a bigger bag?
Wild.
What?
What?
I don't know. It's like,
that's the same size.
Huh.
Oh, well, maybe that is bigger than mine.
Is it 80 grams?
No, mine's 167.
Oh, yeah. You got us twice this size of ours. Which makes a lot of sense.
I was like,
1/3 to 1/6.
You just ate so many calories. I was legitimately concerned for you.
Well, if you want to check on my livelihood, you can do that at Patrick in the World, wherever I can be found on the internet.
Incredible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess until next week. Wait, we have an episode coming out next week?
We will.
Hopefully. I don't know. We'll see you next time. Until then, Janchi, heyo!
Heyo!